Recording in progress.
We're calling the Zoning Commission public hearing, the continuous public hearing to order at 6:33 on July 1st, 2021. This meeting is being recorded for transcription purposes only, and the written minutes and attachments, if any, will serve as the official record of this meeting. Would you please call the roll?
Marzullo?
Here.
Fisher?
Here.
Schneider?
Here.
Crew? Here. Manley?
Here.
In the audience are alternates Rubel, trustees Kalina and Burns, and zoning inspector Wilson.
I think Augustine. And trustee Augustine.
I'm sorry, I'm trustee Augustine. This is in my way, yes.
No, I feel that. I've sat there before.
All right, outstanding. So the purpose of this public hearing is a continuance to the proposed text amendments that we've been working on for the past several years. And we have it pretty well nailed down, the recommended changes to the zoning resolution. However, in a unusual calendar, we approved or recommended approval and sent it to Medina County Planning Commission, who meets on the first Wednesday of each month. And as we meet on the first Thursday of each month, it just so happens that today is the first Thursday of the month, and therefore the Medina County Planning meeting will not happen until Wednesday of next week. We are legally obligated to include or at least review formal documents from the Medina County Planning Committee before we can make any sort of vote on whether or not we are going to proceed with the text amendments, either as written or with minor adjustments, and then send it on to the trustees for review, their public hearing, and ultimately potentially their approval as written. With that said, we can certainly go through the changes. This is a continuance of the original meeting. Do we need to approve the minutes of the public hearing now, or do we do that in the regular meeting? All right. Sorry, a little housekeeping there. So obviously you heard me say that we do have written minutes. Those need to be approved at the start of our regular meeting as opposed to the start of the public hearing. As far as feedback on the public or on the proposed text amendments, I did get a couple of sporadic emails through the course of the month that because it was sent to me via email ahead of time, and they asked me to include their input into the public record. I did want to bring up a concern that was brought by Lisa Rushworth. She said that in reading 18.7I, this appears to be an additional screening requirement for ground-mounted solar arrays, requiring the entire array to be screened instead of just screening the accessories, makes ground-mounted solar arrays less effective for individuals with narrow parcels. If I need to put a 15-foot tall vegetation to screen my 15-foot tall array, I've either got a good bit of property between the neighbor and the array, or my vegetation is likely to shade parts of the array. While there are technologies to handle localized shading in the array, a microinverter, these are more expensive and less common. A lot of solar arrays are set up so individual panel production is reduced to the lowest panel production. As a result, shading a single panel within an array can dramatically reduce electrical generation. Is the screening requirement aesthetic? If my neighbor can build a big ugly barn without having to screen it from my view, I don't see more detriment if they build a big ugly solar installation. At that, they could build a big ugly barn and install roof-mounted panels. If the screening requirement seeks to minimize glare/reflection, then a stipulation like 18.6G seems like it would be sufficient. So That's one of the few emails that I received that actually deals with the proposed text amendment changes. And I'd like to hear anyone's input and thoughts on that now that it's in the public record. Agree, disagree? As far as the screening requirement.
Find it.
So for those in the audience, I'll read the proposed amendment, the amendment to the resolution. In 18.7I, first off, section 18.7 is the freestanding or ground-mounted solar arrays. And the proposed text amendment is screening, freestanding, or ground-mounted solar arrays and accessory components shall be screened from view from public right-of-way and adjacent properties. The screen shall consist of plant materials which provide a visual screen from solar arrays and or any other structures, devices, or accessories used or intended to be used for the collection of solar energy. In lieu of a planting screen, a fence that provides visual screening and meets the requirements of the zoning resolution may be used.
Lindsay, do you have the resolution? If so, can you search for screening and tell us where else screening pertains? I can find it in the B districts that they're screening for other items. I'm just curious as to what other sorts of items require screening.
So we also it's pretty prevalent in the alternative energy. So just the same way we have screening for any sort of accessory components with wind energy. I believe we even have screening from the wood burning stoves and the accoutrement associated with that.
If I can just comment quickly,
Certainly.
just in general. This talks about screening of parking lots along public streets, but it's not very specific other than we're just trying to screen parking areas wherever it's appropriate. We also have, let's see, screening of residential uses where a business district abuts a residential district. A screening buffer has to be in place at least 25 feet in width. And then there's specific requirements for that.
I also see in 18.5 and 18.6 that for roof mounted solar arrays, all accessory components are required to be screened because those are lower as opposed to up on the roof where the solar panels are.
If I understand it, her letter is suggesting that it would cut down on the efficiency, if I will, of the solar panels themselves.
Yeah, she's stating.
I know of 4 or 5 places that I've actually been to with solar panels mounted on the ground, and they must be at least 4 or 5 feet off the ground. What are we putting up? Pine? I mean, we're not telling them they have to have pine trees and all that sort of.
Well, I mean, if they're screened from view from adjacent properties.
Well, in that case, you know, depending on how it's faced, you know, you may want a tree up.
It has to be 30 feet tall. Yeah, exactly.
We do provide for a fence as opposed to a fence that provides visual screening. So I'd imagine, you know, a 6-foot privacy fence would offer some of that too. I mean, the point was to protect the visual sight from the ground level. You're never going to be able to screen way up high on a roof, for instance. That's why we don't have any sort of screening requirements for roof mounted ones. It's only for the ground mounted arrays where we have screening requirements with respect to the panels themselves.
I would hope not, but I think I understand her point, but I think she's wrong. I think they're up too high for, typical kind of bushes I would see around there and hopefully would be trimmed. They wouldn't in any way, I wouldn't think, impede the sunlight.
So I suppose she's probably actually, she may be inquiring, all right, what kind of screening are we talking about? Because in fairness, I don't know that we necessarily define it well enough, aside from just saying, all right, you have to, shall be screened from view from public right of way and adjacent property. So if it's screened from the neighbor's property, does that mean we're only screening to the base of the panel, or does it have to be screened all the way to the top of 15-foot array? And maybe that's what she's asking.
Well,
it's
that's what
unfortunate.
she's asking. That's a little different. The way I was taking is, I'm thinking of typical screening that we would ask for in many cases.
And this is, I guess in a sense, it's almost good that we have to continue it again, because I believe she said that she was still going to be watching. So Ms. Rushworth, if you are watching, please reach out, clarify, or come to next month's meeting, and we'd love to hear from you. Great. We would love some more clarification on that, because it's a great point that I don't think any of us had considered.
Great. But I think it is consistent with the existing language that we have in other portions of the resolution as it currently is written as well. So it's not a deviation from the current.
Correct. I think really what would be interesting would be, all right, as a commission, are we trying to screen the support structures, the infrastructure, as Mr. Manley was referencing, or are we trying to screen the entire array from the neighbor? And I think the majority of this conversation is coming from really one specific instance that already popped up in the township. Bruce, you look like you had something.
Yeah, I was going to make a statement that I just drove in from New York, and they have massive solar arrays all throughout, as well as wind farms.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them are screened, and none of them are over like 5 to 7 foot tall. And I'm talking 2 and 3 acres. Okay, not that you have somebody living next door, but if they're on a hill, which I saw because they were bending, they were going all different directions, and there's no way you're going to actually screen an entire array from a neighbor. There's none, absolutely none. Mm-hmm. So I think if we're just screening the side of it is one thing, but if they're on a hill or the neighbor's on a hill, they're going to see it, and there's no way you're going to prevent it. So that's just my statement of fact.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other input on that?
I would like to hear her
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah. I think if nothing else, I'll certainly reach out via email after this evening and seek a little bit of clarification on that. Trustee Burns, I know you've had quite a bit of input on the solar pieces in the language, and you're pretty familiar with it. What are your thoughts on this?
Ms. Rushworth, it does cite a problem if the screening goes above the edges of the panels. And it does matter the kind of inverter you have. Either way, it's a loss. It's just a greater loss if you have a single inverter for all the panels, which is what she stated. So the board's going to have to decide what does screening mean. And if you put the screening above the edge of a panel, any shading on that panel will impact its performance. I mean, if you think about it, what's the ugly part of the assembly? It's usually that stuff that's stuck in the ground going up to the first set of panels. Otherwise, the panels kind of look like a roof section. It doesn't really, it's not that hideous looking. So what's below that panel section, the iron framework, the wiring, that might be what you're trying to screen. The gravel that's beneath to keep weeds from growing. That's for you guys to decide what you mean by screening. What elevation?
Yes, ma'am.
Angela Chesnick.
Could you please
Drive.
step up to the podium?
Yeah,
We get a much better recording that way, so it'll make minutes that much more accurate.
Okay, Angela Chesnick, Country Brook Drive. I have a neighbor at the end of my street, and about 2 years ago, he was out of town, and he came in town, and they were putting in solar panels, and this was towards the back of the gentleman's property. He lived on Stony Hill. So when he came up his drive on Country Brook Drive, they were like right there. They were like right in his view. So he was going to have to look at that even when he was standing in the front yard. You know what I mean? It was just like, because the gentleman's property comes to the back here, and here's his property here. So I think it all depends on the way your property is situated.
Yeah.
You know?
If we're thinking of the same exact scenario, I think this was also within the required setbacks.
Yes.
So ultimately ended up getting removed and relocated.
Right. Put in the building and put him on top of his building.
One of the things that's complicated about zoning is that ultimately what we're trying to do is figure out, all right, how do we set up the rules so that everyone can be satisfied?
Yeah.
And really, we cannot force people to be good neighbors. Just the same way, if something is outside of those setbacks and it's okay, but you still don't like it, you could put in blue spruce along it, and now it's shaded, and now they're useless.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I would love for people to just be neighborly.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of what we see and deal with are people that don't want to play nice with others, and that's also their right.
I understand. I'm just letting you know that's kind of, I think
I think that's the genesis of
Right.
some of this.
Right.
We've actually been working on the solar verbiage. I believe for about 3 years. It's evolved pretty dramatically. A ton of thanks to 350 Hinckley. I'm not for sure if you all are familiar with them. It's a local organization that's very involved in renewable resources and energy, and they've helped us craft a lot of our solar or alternative energy language. And actually, we kind of got a commendation from the Medina County Planning about how well it's verb and kind of leading the way in the county. So we got that going for us.
Mr. Chair, I might make a remark.
Yes.
That's why you should have, if you have you should create a strong homeowners association. They can do a lot of things that we can't do. Now, that's part of the thing. The second thing is to be funded enough that you can take these case situations to court for those neighbors who choose not to play by the rules that have been established. And there's a lot of things they can fix that you can't touch. Because,
In that specific instance, they're actually not in the same neighborhood.
oh,
One's a development, one is off of Stony
okay.
Hill.
My comment still stands. It doesn't
Yeah.
fit here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're absolutely sure. Spot on there. Now, other than that, we did have a couple of questions come up specific, and I'm going to bring these up on my phone as well. Asking specifically about when the resolution and text amendment changes happened and all of that. Now, most of the emails that we received do not pertain directly to the text amendments, and so I put together a kind of a compilation of a lot of emails, which genuinely, and I say this with complete sincerity, thank you. Thank you to everyone in the community who's been involved, whether you're on one side or the other. Local government does not work effectively without community involvement. So thank you. And I mean that with complete sincerity. Civility is also appreciated. Just want to throw that out there. So some of the questions that were asked is, let's see. Why is zoning seeking changes to the language in zoning related to automobile service station? For what purpose? Who made this request for change? What impact will this have on current and future project plans? So just to be clear, I do not respond to emails to my zoning email for a reason, so that I can address them in a public forum. Your comments become part of public record. Our response as a commission becomes part of public record. And frankly, I'm human, unfortunately, so I may misspeak or mistype, make mistakes. And if I'm doing it in a public setting, someone can catch me. There can be clarifying questions. There's a lot that goes into this. It's not that I'm ignoring anyone. I am not, I assure you. I actually take copious notes. Why are we seeking the changes? This goes back to the BZA, really. The BZA needs to have a clear understanding of how we interpret and write the resolution. If you look at our current definition of a service station, it's something that you'd find in Mayberry in 1943. And frankly, it doesn't fit today. So what we're doing is clearing up any sort of confusion as to, all right, what's okay, what isn't okay. And this started well over a year ago. The purpose of it is to ensure that when the BZA has something come to them, that we can remove any sort of, well, did they mean this? Did they mean that? Did they mean this? Did they mean that? And, as far as any existing project, we've already been quite clear on how we view that. And we shared that with the BZA. How they choose to interpret the existing resolution with our recommendation is up to the BZA. Who made the request for the change? Genuinely, no idea. These things, they come up in conversation over the course of our meetings, and they develop late. For a long time, we spent, hours, months of meetings talking about in-law suites. And it was something, all right, how do we put it? How do we define it? And it was just brought up almost offhand in one meeting. And for a good year and a half, we kept touching on this topic until ultimately we said, you know what? Let's leave it as is. And it's not that it's not an issue so much as it was, you know what? We think the existing resolution covers it pretty comprehensively. And we didn't want to put cracks where there wasn't already a crack. What impact will this have on current plans? Zero. If an application is already filed, it's grandfathered. It goes by the existing resolution. That's how all laws work. And ostensibly, the zoning resolution is a law. It's the rules for developing the community. As far as future plans, anyone that files a future plan will have to adhere to the resolution as it's written the day they file that plan. And that really were those were really the only questions directly related to the text amendment. The other questions we will get to in the regular meeting. It doesn't pertain to the topic at hand. Now, with all of that being spouted by me, we do need to continue this public hearing for another month because, as I said at the outset, we are legally obligated to take into account the Medina County Planning Commission's notes on our text amendments. We have preliminary notes that the commission has, and they just received before this meeting. And now we all have an opportunity to go back, read those notes, digest them, think about them, and then come back in a month discuss it a little bit further. And then we will have the opportunity to vote on what day is the next meeting? August something or other.
I think it's 6th, maybe.
August 6th.
Oh, August 6th? It's your anniversary. It's my wife's birthday. All right.
5th.
5th. All right. There we go. I'm good then. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until until August 5th and propose a time maybe again of 6:30. If anyone would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Manley, seconded by Mr. Schneider.
Do we have no more comments, or will we do that, or?
Would anyone like to make any public comment? All right. Would you please call the roll? Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Crew,
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
All right. And with that, we adjourn the public hearing at 6:59 on 1 July 2021. And if everybody wants to take a moment, feel free. I think we'll take a quick minute so I can get organized up here. And
Recording stopped.
I think this
Mr. Chair.
Recording in progress.
All right, we're going to call the Zoning Commission regular meeting to order at 7:03 on July 1st, 2021. If you need to start with this and then we can call the roll. The meeting is being recorded for transcription purposes only, and the written minutes and attachments, if any, will serve as the official record of this meeting. Please call the roll.
Bardugo.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Crew.
Here.
Manley.
Here.
In the audience are alternates Rubel, trustees Burns, Kalina, and Augustine, and zoning inspector Wilson.
All right, outstanding. To begin with, let's take a look at the meeting or at the minutes from the public hearing on June 3rd, 2021. The Zoning Commission had an opportunity to review these. Has everyone had a chance to review them? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Did anybody note any changes that we need to make?
I didn't see any
No.
changes.
Nope.
If no changes are noted, I would entertain a motion to approve the meetings from the June 3rd, 2021 public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Fisher,
Second.
seconded by Crew. Please call the roll.
Bardugo.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Crew.
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
All right, outstanding. Next, we'll move on to the regular meeting minutes from June 3rd of 2021. Everyone had an opportunity or received these roughly the same time. Did everyone have an opportunity to review these? And did anyone find any adjustments?
I don't know about adjustments, maybe clarification on one.
Okay, sure. What was that?
Trying to. I put a star next to it. Let me just figure it out. Page 7 of 9, second paragraph. The sentence says, one is senior housing through housing. Part 1 is getting senior housing through is by senior residential facilities, which are a conditional use. So
It's the way Pride One is getting senior housing
The way.
through is by. The way that they're able to advance this is
by.
because they're
Okay.
arguing that it's a senior citizen.
All right, well, that wasn't my
facility.
concern. I just couldn't spit it out here. Be after the next line down, Marcus, so that we could possibly be where they could look if they want to amend this. So
I
that,
think that's just my poor English. What I'm saying there is that that's, if we want to look at amending the resolution, this is where we should look because this is what they're using to advance the Pride One development is the senior housing language of the zoning resolution because the discussion about this pertained to, there was a lot of discussion about the comprehensive plan and
Right.
I was referring us back to the resolution and that if we want to make amendments, we really should look at making amendments to the resolution.
okay, all right.
I don't know if there's any change that's probably the
Not
way
a
I
change,
said
but
it. So
that you explained it, I understand what you're saying. No changes?
One on the page 8 of 9, on the last long paragraph, starts with Trustee Kalina. About midway through, it says Trustee Kalina stated there has to be a basis for that. And then the after the comma, there's just a reference and it almost seems arbitrary. The prosecutor has to have the justification for that.
I think that,
Stace?
I don't know, maybe what he's saying here, but I think that what he's saying here is that there has to be some basis for a change. And so the prosecutor has to have some justification when they're going up to court that would justify why are we increasing it from a 2-acre lot to a 3-acre lot, or from a 2-acre lot to a 5-acre lot. And so that's what, I think that was his train of thought there, is that there's got to be some basis for the change and that the prosecutor has to have justification for that change. Does that seem like a logical way of view?
Logical.
All right. So we'll keep it as is. So if there aren't any changes, I'd entertain a motion to approve the zoning committee or zoning commission regular meeting minutes from June 3rd, 2021. Moved by Ms. Crew, seconded by Mr. Manley. Please call the roll.
Rosula,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Schneider, Crew,
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
All right, and to get into public comments, correspondence received. Get into that a little bit more. This isn't in any particular order, so much as I was going through my emails and pulled out the questions that were sent towards us, and I want to make sure that I answered every one. Paul Suhe asked, I noticed what looks to be a new development going in on West 130th Street near Pine Hills Golf Course. Would you happen to know who the developer is? Yes, that is Parkview Homes Design Center. They're at 22,700 Royalton Road, Strongsville, Ohio, 44149. Ms. or Nikki Long stated, I am concerned about the proposed changes to the zoning code about the auto service station. I am concerned that these changes were proposed around the time the Tiremax application and seem to address the very issue which the BZA is currently deliberating over. I do not want a gas station or an auto service station in Hinckley. I believe these changes are being requested so that those very businesses can be opened in Hinckley. Who submitted an application for these changes? Again, I have no idea. It was something that kind of grew out of our previous conversations. So who actually submitted it? I mean, if we have to ascribe it to anyone, just the board at large. As far as it almost seems like there's an inference of dubiousness in what we're trying to do here, and that's certainly not the case. As I stated in the public hearing, these changes were started long before the application came across our table, and really the changes are to provide clarification and a little bit more understanding for the BZA in any application, not just the current one that's in front of them.
If I might add, this started when the outfit, we're talking 5-6 years ago, from Brunswick was thinking about moving their facility down here, and they rented buses and that.
No, the bus service company.
Without getting into names, but that they were looking at a piece of property on 130th, and the question came up is because they service these vans that they rent out, were they a service station? And that's kind of when this thing started. That wow, this is really out of date here.
Yeah, no, that's a fair statement. And what was uniquely different about that one is that it wasn't a repair facility in a for public consumption.
Correct.
And that's why initially that plan was viewed as, all right, this probably falls within the permitted applications.
Correct.
As opposed to a conditional.
And if I may add, because you already mentioned in the public hearing, but anything that happens with Tire Max is going to be reviewed under the current definition, not under the proposed definition. So.
All right. Then we had the, from James Larson, was there a formal application for building the proposed Tire Max made to the Zoning Commission? And if so, when was that done? Was an application for permit even required? That was done, and I don't have it. Let me pull it up. I do have the answer. The Tire Max conditional use request was filed with the zoning office and reviewed for acceptance of submittal on May 27th, 2021. Tire Max site plan review was filed with the zoning office and reviewed for acceptance of submittal on May 27th, 2021. So what we're looking at are applications that were submitted within the, well after, actually, I think after we had even recommended the text amendment, like well after. And because the text amendments have not yet been adopted, it will still fall under the existing zoning regulation, just to be clear on that. Was an application for permit even required? Yes. If there were an application made, was there any involvement of anyone in a position of authority, inspector, commissioner, trustee, to counsel or give guidance to either the property owner or principals in Tire Max about how to proceed with this project prior to any formal application? I believe in the last meeting that the applicant actually stated, yes, I spoke to a previous trustee. I see no problem with that. My recommendation to anyone that wants to build or open a business or do anything within the township, rather than ask someone closely related, ask the people that are actually directly involved. I believe that there was I think the commission in general believes that there was a misinterpretation of the existing resolution that had it come to us, it would have been what we said at the last meeting, which is, no, this is likely an auto repair facility, which is zoned I2, not B1.
I can't restrain myself.
Please, come on up.
This is my reward for reading through all of the year's worth of minutes from your meetings. James Larson, 20 Car Road, Hinckley. I wrote that because I said I waited back through all the meeting minutes, and the very first mention of Tire Max as a notion occurred in April 2020. But the dialogue in there clearly stated that something happened before, which I haven't been able to dig out of any of your meeting minutes. And therein lies the issue for me, is the coincidence of the Tire Max location being posited as a project that you would consider. And all of a sudden now, the definition of what a gas station is, all of a sudden, which lay dormant for years, now all of a sudden it's a priority, and grew as a priority over the subsequent 12 months. So that's my concern, and let it appear whatever it is, but I believe in coincidences, but I don't believe in coincidences just like that. Now, getting back to the meeting with the trustee and so forth, and on the proposed property, how often does a sitting trustee go out to a property with an inspector? I don't know if the homeowner was there, or the property owner was there, or somebody from Tire Max is there. That just looks bad, because that trustee couldn't have been there for any other reason other than to have his presence made known to the inspector, and in this indirect way, say, look, I'm here, I'm interested in this, what's going on? mean, that's real mild pressure, and I've seen it in a number of places, but that just seems wrong. And I'm real curious as to how you guys view that kind of thing. Do trustees go out all the time on projects, you know, big, small, giant, and look at this kind of stuff? Because, you know, that's really bothersome to me. And it was since this whole thing, I don't care about tarmacs or anything. What I care most about is the appearance of equity and fairness, that a little business owner, a little homeowner gets the same access and the same attention from a trustee, inspector, whoever it might be, as a big property owner. And that's all I really care about. I don't care if you build a tarmac store or anything else there. I just want it to conform to what the rules are. I don't want the rules changed to accommodate a new idea or a business that isn't otherwise going to conform. And that's my principal gripe with a lot of what's going on here. So that's really all I care about. Thank you. And I tried to write that email as polite as I could. Oh, and clearly state. I know I said it 3 times.
No.
Okay.
So,
and I won't ever do that again. Or I might do it again if you answer.
would you mind just saying your address so that we can get it?
Jim Larson, 20 Carr Road, Hinckley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. So a couple things I want to kind of touch base on there that you brought up. First, how often does a trustee and inspector go out to a location? I would ask Mr. Wilson, but I will say it is not unheard of. It is not uncommon. We, as an entire commission, did a site plan review for the Skyline Golf Course. So to go out and see these properties is actually very, very common. And I would certainly like to alleviate any sort of perception of impropriety there. It was not a one time, I'm only going to do this, Mr. Wilson, you better approve it kind of thing. That's, first off, I don't think Mr. Wilson, I don't think that would pressure him in any way, shape, or form. As far as the coincidence of this, I would be curious to hear your understanding of the further definition or the further defining I guess I don't understand how that is either a good thing or a bad thing for the plan at hand. Because I stated here, and we as a team stated in the last meeting that, okay, we don't believe that this is a automotive refueling station. This is an automotive repair facility. And we have an area in the township zoned for automotive repair. Whether or not
the B1 district,
which is not the B1 district. Thank you. And whether or not we have a service station there, we almost did. And now it's on the northwest corner of West 130th and 303 instead of the southeast. And I don't know concretely why that fell through. I believe it had something to do with wetlands.
Yes, completely.
Okay.
Completely.
And frankly, I don't know what happened to those wetlands. Do they still exist? Do we have any feedback from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers? And I don't know the answer to that. But I am certainly here to give you the most transparent answers that I can possibly give you. And I do want you to know that there was zero impropriety in a sitting trustee and a zoning inspector going out to look at a property. It happens often. Not every property, but it does happen.
The other thing that I want to mention is that, the resolution has some gray areas. And so when we identify a gray area that we think should be clarified, that's what we would like to do. And so when with respect to the service station, if it's gray, if it's unclear as to what qualifies as a service station, and we can find a better way of doing it, then that is absolutely something that the zoning commission should do, because it only helps us at the BZA level to have that more crystal clear language that they can then use to interpret our statute. And so that is certainly what we've tried to do with the language with respect to automotive service station, changing to the refueling station versus the automotive repair and service station.
Thank you, Marcus. And you know, one of the reasons that I said in the public hearing, and I'll restate it here, I love all of the community involvement, genuinely, because our resolution has blind spots. We've been on the board and we read through it and we try and digest it as much as possible, but a lot of times you get so accustomed to it, you overlook existing blind spots where the community may read through it and say, hey, you know what, I have a question about this. And if it's, look at what Ms. Rushworth said, right, in the public hearing. Like, what about this screening? Okay, hey, that's a good point. Let's think about it. And we've worked on that verbiage for years. So we are fallible. And if you come to us with a question and we look at it and we can't provide a clear answer, then that's where we start saying, like, ooh, maybe we should further define this. Maybe we should adjust this. And that's why we really don't know where the recommendation for the changes or who uttered it initially. All right. All right. And a little bit further on that original email. Was there any guidance to the property owner or principals in Tarmax about how to proceed with this project prior to any formal application, how to overcome any administrative obstacles that might prevent it from being approved? That I don't know. Whether or not Mr. Wilson or trustee said, hey, you know what, you're going to have to worry about these wetlands. You got to figure something out there first. I mean, it's a lot like hiring a lawyer before you go into court. I want to know what landmines I'm gonna step on. And to that end, Mr. Wilson is employed by the township to help people through this process, to help them, all right, understand these are the regulations and this is what you're going to have to follow. And it's not all right, we're going to clear the way and make sure no one objects. Anyone that's been in a room with me for more than 30 minutes knows I don't lay down for stuff. And it's a fault of mine at times, as my wife can attest. But there's no way that someone's going to come in and say, all right, we just have to rubber stamp this to let this happen. That's not in any way how I know the people on this board. Previous boards I can't speak to, only the boards that I have been on. And we don't work that way. I oftentimes will pose the opposite viewpoint of something that everyone's in agreement with, just to make sure that we talk about both sides of every single issue. And we will get to that later on with a couple other things. All right, we did have some recommendations that were sent along. That covers the questions that came in to me via email. We also had some recommendations come across that were first presented and then seconded by a few different folks. Scott Simchick, Nikki Long, Angela and Tony Chesnick. Recommendations including amend the zoning code and comprehensive plan to restrict any multifamily units of any kind to include apartments, cluster homes, etc., from any of the zoning types to include B1 and B2. Amend the zoning code to further define seniors as any person 62 and older in accordance with the Older Persons Act of 1995. Number 3, amend the zoning code and comprehensive plan to prevent the exploitation of our community. Number 4, amend the zoning code and comprehensive plan to prevent the spread of any new developments, whether residential or business, which do not meet the values of our community. This is a simple and fluid statement which requires further engagement with the community on issues like frontage requirements, minimum acreage requirements, conservation districts, etc. We want to see a series of public meetings solely dedicated to this topic. Number 5, the creation of a township-wide survey on minimum acreage requirement or a formal request by the township to have the question of minimum acreage be placed on the November 2021 ballot. So that's a lot. These are all recommendations that we can take under advisement and start looking at if it's something we need to do. But before we get into that, I do want to follow up on something that I promised as a do-out in the last meeting. Someone had asked, how do you go about getting a resolution or a referendum on the ballot? Shorter answer is I have no idea. I researched it. I looked it up. I spoke to the Medina County Board of Elections. Ultimately, what I was told, read chapters 6 and 7 of the Ohio Ballot Issues and Questions Handbook. I did that. I read them both. I'm not an attorney. Folks, I tried to understand it and I don't know. And I apologize. When I did speak with Medina County Board of Elections, they were very clear that, you know, before something's going to get put on the ballot, they would very, very strongly recommend hiring an attorney to actually prepare the papers. And that would include having an attorney that could actually interpret chapter 6 and 7, because I read them front to back multiple times. I got nothing. I'm sorry. I fell short on that one. Anyone else familiar with the process? But as I said, I owed that to you guys, and I did do that research. Additionally, we had several people making statements that were of general concern, mostly alluding to the Keep Hinckley Rural. Those emails of general concern came from T.L. Rickards, Mark Kowalski, Sue Campbell, Connie Seibert, Mike and Sherry Ulrich, Alexander Yordovich, Sharon McGill, Frank Tamaro, Heidi Rauser-Gutwein, Penny Molnar, Kim Kuczynski, and Angela Chesney. So that takes care of all the emails and at least brings all of that into public record. I would really appreciate anyone's input and feedback on that. That was a lot of talking.
I'd like to make a comment that
Mr. Mayor,
people should start paying attention to what's happening in several states, including New York, close to us, where the United States government has stepped into communities who are attempting to do away with zoning in such a way that only multi-family units are permissible. And they've already done this in places of Portland. So, as long as you stay under the radar, it appears you're okay. But we put something in there that's multi-family, I think you're asking for it. This is not the time to do it. I'm not suggesting we permit them in, but I'm just saying that some things you just got to let set. But for every action, there's a reaction, and you may not like the reaction.
If I may, I was listening to the BZA discussion and vote on the senior housing, and I've been listening on the Tiremex as well, and so this always inspires some changes. So I'm sure as a result of what the BZA and how the BZA interpreted some of the regulations, we'll go through and look at them and probably propose some amendments. I can very well see us taking and looking at the senior care facilities language again. I can very well see us looking at multifamily and whether it should be completely eliminated or restricted on some zones or restricted in terms of units or sizes or something. To the extent that we can, I think that those are very important things that we'll probably start to now look at. You can see that this is a very long process. We've been going on for 6 months probably with the amendments that we've proposed now, and they're still not through, and we still have to have yet another public hearing. It then has to still go through the township. So it's a very slow process, but it's something that I think we'll certainly pick up. Some of these other items, I appreciate you going and looking for how something gets on the, ballot, that's not really something that the zoning commission does. That's not really our role, is to advocate or figure out a way to advance something to the ballot. That's another avenue for making change. And so, anyone can go out there and do that and provide, a pathway to that position. And that's really not something that the zoning commission is too involved in.
Mm-hmm. Or at all. Correct. Mr. Schneider.
The one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is if there's something in the zoning that is not, that the business is not following, they go in for a revision, and they go to the BZA and ask for that revision. The teeth the BZA has is the zoning book. That's our job. Our job is to make sure the zoning book is to fit today's needs, so they have the teeth to do their job, because they're like our legal group. They're the ones that make the decisions that whether something can really be implemented or not, or how it has to be changed. If there's a problem, it comes back to us. So how do we get some of this information that we've worked on 2 and 3 years ago, and now it's coming back up again? Because a lot of times the BZA gets something like this and says, hey, have you looked at this? Can you look at it again? Things of that nature. And I think a lot of residents think that we just sit here and do absolutely nothing, but we don't. We actually work on things that are given to us that needs resolved. And when we resolve something, myself personally, I don't look at TJ Maxx. I don't look at a senior housing development. We look at also what is the criteria that brings it here, because TJ Maxx might be here for 2 years and gone. So we're looking at the zoning and the property of TJ Maxx, not just a company. Every single business that goes in and is implemented, they have to follow the guidelines in the zoning book. And I really wish, if anybody really, really wants to get into it, read the zoning book first, and then bring it to either the commission or the BZA or to the trustees. And then you may have some really meat in the subject. That's it.
Thanks, Bruce. Are there any more questions from the public on any of this?
I got this up in my zoning book right here.
Great.
Very, very not simple.
Give me questions. Give me the podium.
Yes. Trustee Augustine,
You want me to go to the podium?
if you wouldn't mind, please.
I didn't expect to stand up here today. Melissa Augustine, Hinckley Township trustee. Do you know my address? Thank you.
So that's not necessary. You're an employee of this.
Thank you.
You're good.
I just wanted to let you know that I got a call today from Suzanne Peterlin. She's working on our agenda, the trustee regular meeting agenda for next Tuesday. And all 3 trustees have the comprehensive plan listed as an agenda item. We had told the public that we would send it through you as statute and how we have traditionally done it. And in conversations with some of the previous trustees, we've determined that the zoning commission should not handle the comprehensive plan. It should be done by the trustees so that it has more integrity, and a legal team couldn't possibly come back and say that the same commission that put together the zoning resolution did the comprehensive plan. This way, there's a little bit more teeth to your point, Bruce. And we did say at the last meeting, sorry, I forgot to mention this, Trustee Kalina and I asked that you do look to better define senior housing, please. Thank you. Any questions for me?
Thank you. What's a little bit complicated for me anyways about the definition of senior housing is that it is tied to the federal definition. And because it's tied to the federal definition, it's difficult for us to change it without facing legal recourse. And I'm not 100% as to whether or not we can exclude certain pieces of the federal definition without opening ourselves and the township up to a tremendous lawsuit. And that's that for right now. when we get more guidance from the Medina County prosecutor, if they tell us, yeah, you know what, you can make these changes, then I'm sure we'd be very open to a robust discussion about that. Now, another piece of information that I came across was actually from the Medina County Farm Bureau, who specifically provided the mirror view of the Keep Hinckley Rural, the initiative to increase the acreage from 2 to 5. And according to, actually, let me see if I can pull up the exact quotes here. But according to the Medina County Farm Bureau, when you increase the acreage requirement for a property, generally speaking, the value of the property does drop. Rationale behind that is frontage. And if you have a 150 acre farm, but you only have 200 feet of frontage on any public right of way, then it's really difficult to put a road in there that actually works and allows you to access the entire acreage. So specifically when they're five acre lots, you might end up with really thin lots on sides of the road that frankly are not developable. So you end up losing some value of that property. You know, we've gone back and forth as a commission about the conservation developments. And that's where the existing verbiage, first with the yield plan, reduces, it doesn't reduce, it levels the playing field, so to speak, between a traditional development and a conservation development. We've talked about this in the past, and I'm happy to talk about it again. The way the yield plan works is, in order to put in a conservation development, a developer first has to determine how many pieces or how many parcels, how many homes could go into a traditional development on the same exact parcel of land, taking into account wetlands, setbacks, everything, including the roads, drainage, everything. And if they have a 100 acre piece of land and they can only put in 43 homes, and then they decide, hey, you know what, we're going to put in conservation development to get 50 homes in instead. They can't. They can only put in the 43 homes because that's all they would be able to put in with a traditional 2 acre development. Now, what we see in Skyland is a lot of homes right on top of each other, right on the road. All the conservation land is at the back. That does not preserve the rural aesthetic of Hinckley. And so now we have our new proposed text amendment, which pushes the initial lot 500 feet off of the existing thoroughfare. It does not in any way reduce the number of homes that can be built on the property. It simply forces some of that foliage to be between the existing right-of-way and the initial construction, so that we can still preserve the rural nature of Hinckley, which on paper is what conservation developments are supposed to do. So a lot of the so-called loopholes, I don't like to call them that, because to me, a loophole is something that is distinctly put in there to allow someone a backdoor. They were blind spots. And as soon as they're exposed to us, what do? Oh, let's shine some light on that and let's fix it so that we can still continue to drive towards the comprehensive plan and doing what's best for the community. Any other comments?
You've done well.
Are there any questions from the community on any of this at this point? Yes,
Dawn Livingstone.
thank you.
Sorry about that. Dawn Livingstone, 784 Stony Hill. Are there any more of those types of developments currently being examined or applied for at this time?
At this point, no.
Okay,
Are there any coming?
we don't know.
I wish I had a crystal ball. Our zoning resolution to be locked up.
Are we going to fix these loopholes before this next developer comes in?
Which
Because that's
loophole?
Skylar, well, whatever those loopholes are that push that 500 feet.
So
all
that's what the public hearing was for today.
Okay,
It had to be continued until next month.
okay, I'll be there next month then, sorry.
After that, we will vote on it. If it's approved as written, then it goes to the trustees. The trustees then have to have their public hearing. After they have their public hearing, then they can vote to either approve or deny it.
So between this and say October, by the time all this pans out, there could be a developer that comes in and would get in under this current paper.
It would not have to be 500 feet off the road, but the existing yield plan does in fact exist.
Okay,
It's already in the resolution and it is required.
because that Skyline is a hot mess. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Larson, if you wouldn't mind.
This is about conservation district.
Yes, sir.
There's just, I've read through a lot of the dialogue, and conservation is not a simple subject. It's complicated. There's lots of money involved. There's lots of houses involved. But one set of residents, it seems like you've completely left out of your considerations. And those are the residents, and many are longtime residents, that all of a sudden have lost all their green space control. And now you've got houses with cul-de-sacs, houses being built around cul-de-sacs that literally abut their backyard. And my request to you guys when you consider how to amend these conservation districts is to consider those long-term residents, where those conservation districts go, and take a look at how close or how much green space extra you could leave them when you make your recommendations for how the project is to be arranged. I've gone to a couple houses over there, and it's just terrible what has happened to those people in Stony Hill, some of them. Granted, some of those things have been moved around, but to have basically a wide open green space behind the property forever, with the expectation that it stay that way, even though that might be an incorrect expectation. I think it's incumbent on you guys to protect those people to some degree, to give them some extra green space that they can live and enjoy their property. I would hate it if somebody was to build 3 houses right next to me, right next to my backyard, and I'm sure you would too. So when you consider how to amend this thing, I wish you'd take that into your consciousness and see what you can do. But take a look at the satellite pictures of Skyline, and I can guarantee you will see things that you wouldn't want to have moved next to you. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And one of the things that we've that is in the proposed text amendment is actually an increased setback. So that instead of having, I think it was 50 feet.
It was 50 feet
boundary
building.
Yeah.
And
now it's 100 feet from the lot. So there would be 100 feet in a conservation development. If it is a traditional 2-acre development, they have every right to come in, clear cut the land, and put the house right behind you. If that is what the property owner wants to do, we cannot deny them that right. What we're trying to do is preserve the rural nature of Hinckley and still allow for the development that is going to come. Urban sprawl it's nothing new. It's knocking on our door, and it's going to continue to knock. And so what we're trying to do with our resolution is ensure that we do the most with what we've got. I remember bringing it up multiple years ago about the conservation developments, and the only way you actually see the green space is if you're flying over Hinckley in a small aircraft. That's not right. That is not why people move to Hinckley. Conversely, folks that want to live on a half-acre, three-quarter-acre lot surrounded by green space in their conservation development should also have the right to do that. We're trying to find the right balance as a commission, and it's, as we can all see, it's not an easy task. I'm talking too much. Can you guys help me out here? Mr. Yeah, please.
Chairman Marzullo, I just wanted to make one quick comment. I'm one of the alternate zoning commission members. And the one thing that keeps resonating with me, I live on Stony Hill too, so I'm not quite as affected as some other properties are, but ultimately I almost butt up to the golf course. And when we're looking at how we can form or change the zoning code to protect what we call a rural feel, there's this little voice on one side of my shoulder that's saying the law really disfavors restrictions on real property. So while we're trying to balance that, we can't put so many restrictions that you can't build. And I would just say I'm not happy about having the golf course being developed behind me, but at the same time, we're trying to balance that thought. If we try to put restrictions on everybody else's property, you can't build an outbuilding now because the majority of residents think it's unsightly. How would that affect many of us who have outbuildings? So it's this balance, and it's very delicate, and we just have to really keep that in mind, that if we're putting too many restrictions on real property, that we're going to get challenged possibly legally, and that's going to be an outpouring of money for the township that we're going to have to spend on that, and it might not accomplish the goals if we're too restrictive. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's a great point. It really highlights the difference between a republic and a democracy. And the bottom line is we live in a republic, and if we try to rule democratically where mob rules, you will lose in a republic court. And so that's something we need to consider. And I don't think anyone up here is saying, hey, we should just have mob rule. If 50.1% of the public says only dogs and cats are allowed in Hinckley, I don't think anyone on this board is going to say, hey, I'll vote in favor of that. It just, again, it's the balance that you referenced.
Statement. When somebody buys a piece of property, are you buying it for the scenery, or are you buying it for the property you're buying? You know, well, that's not the way it works, okay? When you buy,
Here's the question. Do I buy a piece of property, where it's positioned, I like the property, I like what's around me.
Right.
So it's the view and the property.
But you own your property. That person next to you that owns that property can do what he wants with that property.
Depending where you are. Correct?
No.
If the zoning's in place, and we'll bring up the development question before, then the other board members
I'm not wait. Be kind. Be kind where you're at, okay? I'm not here for argument. I'm saying is you have the right on your property to do what you want. And the people, the farmer, if that's his 401k and decides to sell it, or if it's somebody else that says, well, I've been here for 36 years, I've loved it, but you know, the heck with my neighbor, I'm going to sell it, do whatever I can, I want the most money for it. Or you have some people that build a house in a highly wooded area, and they just take out just a clump of trees to build a house. You don't have a say on how they build their house. Correct. But if they want to raise it down and cut grass, they can.
Two different scenarios. we're looking at.
But that has nothing to do with zoning. That's up to the individual that buys that property, whatever he does. If he needs a permit, he goes to zoning and gets a permit. He doesn't walk around his neighbors and say, hey, can I do this or can I do that? Okay, that's all I'm saying. Okay, you have to give him his due just as they give you your due.
Zoning
Okay.
sets the basic rules of play.
Mm-hmm.
So my neighbor, take a facetious situation. My neighbor wants to put an airport in. They can't do it. It's not permitted. So the zoning sets the basic guidelines for how things are done, correct?
Okay, but if he wants to build if he has a piece of property that he wants to build a runway at, a personal runway, and he turns around and says, I want to fly my planes, he goes to the BZA for an adjustment. The BZA says yes or no. It's no. Then and at that time, all the residents get a chance to express their opinion. Okay? But this is just a general book of what the rules are. And without this, there is no rules. And without rules, you have chaos.
Don't disagree.
Okay.
If I can make one comment, what I would say is that, when we look at the resolution and we're considering amendments, we're always considering how those affect the current rights of the homeowner. So if the current rights of a property owner are X and we're changing it, how significant is that change? And so, the changes that we just did, we consider them to be more clarification and not a change of the rights of a homeowner. But when we are changing the rights of the homeowner, we are being very mindful about how that's affecting that homeowner. So, we felt that a change to the conservation land that allowed for some restriction on the buildable land was we've limited that slightly, but we haven't done so to the extent that homeowner is no longer able to use that land to develop homes or whatever. So that's going back to Lindsay's point. That's constantly where we're balancing is if the homeowner has a current right on the land, how much do we want to impede that right?
Well, I'm saying,
Are we going to continue to the agenda?
are we going to get to the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at now.
Okay, thanks.
So now, I hope that covers a large portion of what everyone's been concerned about. But we do have our new business, which is the preliminary site plan review for the Tire Max proposal, as well as the preliminary site plan review for Pride 1 Senior Housing Project. The preliminary site plan review for the Tire Max proposal, they do not have a conditional approval from the BZA at this point.
It was continued.
It was continued to next week, or I'm sorry, to next month because they did not have a quorum.
They had a quorum.
But one person had to recuse himself.
They still had a quorum. The reason that they decided to continue it in part was they're looking for a definition, I think, from legal counsel as to whether this meets the definition of a service station, and therefore a conditional permit can even be granted, or if it doesn't meet that, and therefore it's not even a conditional use and no conditional permit can be granted. So I think that that's what happened, correct? There was a quorum, but they're waiting on input from third parties before they could make a determination. And they were also hoping for a full board as opposed to 3 members, where any 2 would be kill the deal.
Yes, they did not have a full board.
And so because they did not give us which way they're leaning on this, there's really no point in reviewing the preliminary site plan. It's very possible that the BZA will say, no, this is not zoned for this. You cannot put it here. And if that happens, then it will no longer be new business. If it is approved, it can be new business next month. And if I'm open to debate on that, whether you'd rather look at it today with the potential of it coming before the board, or if we want to postpone it until we know whether or not it's coming before us.
The only thing I would say is I know that we sent a letter and they've since refined the plan. And I think part of that letter stated something about our concerns about where the boundaries of the sublots were potentially before. So, and I know they've changed the plan since then. So I don't know if we need to revise our letter at all or provide additional guidance regarding any of the changes that they made at this point to send back to BZA. Outside of that, I don't think that there's anything new to discuss.
If we need to, or if the position of the board is, or of the commission is that I adjust the memorandum and send it, I'm happy to do so based on the existing site plan. But I think in my opinion, it still fails to address the fundamental definition issue that we've addressed multiple times at this point.
Correct. I think we need to wait.
Yeah.
I think we should move on.
And the purpose here is to review that they're in compliance with the zone.
Mhm.
And if there's a serious question among ourselves or on the BZA as to where do they fit, then I don't know how we can address that issue, which may very well be the primary issue, whether it goes or not. So
Yeah. And I
suggest we wait. I recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, we've already addressed that primary issue, I think twice tonight and once last month. And
it was in the letter.
And we still haven't.
and yet we still don't have an answer from the BZA, but we will have one next month. So I would, I guess I'd entertain a motion to table discussion on the Tire Max site plan review to August 5th.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Schneider, seconded by Ms. Crew. Please call the roll.
Marzullo?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Crew?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
And now the senior housing project. The Board of Zoning Appeals decision obviously was to grant a conditional approval with a couple of changes, several changes actually. And as a result, Medina County Planning Commission wants the entire plan to come before them again. So now the senior housing site plan needs to go back to Medina County Planning because of the changes that have been made to meet the conditional permit. As a result, we cannot review or look at this until we receive their feedback. It is on their agenda, I believe, for this coming Wednesday. I'm getting a no from, maybe not.
I don't know that.
Okay. It may not be on their agenda for Wednesday. However, Tire Max is. So one of these will be addressed next month.
You had mentioned the wetlands. Has that been responded to?
I have not seen any of it in the preliminary feedback.
I think that their civil consultant made a comment, but nothing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Actually, something that, so on June 25th, I received
Please state your name.
I'm sorry, Ben Weinerman, on behalf of Hinckley Senior Apartment and Pride One Construction. On June 25th, I received the approved jurisdictional determination from the Department of Army Corps. I brought copies with me to distribute to you folks. And I would have got this to you sooner, but I've been on vacation until yesterday and just got caught up on emails today. So this.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, frankly, this is something I'm going to have to digest. It's certainly nothing that changes the fact that we have to table this anyways.
Do you know yet if you're going to accept or appeal?
I'm sorry?
Do you know yet if you're going to accept the
We
approval?
would accept, yeah.
So again, this is quite a bit of information that we'll have to digest. And it will certainly weigh into the conversation next month, but it doesn't change the fact that we still need our input from the Medina County Planning before we even address it. Any input from anyone on that one?
I'd like to review it myself.
Yeah,
See what
absolutely.
the planning commission has to say also.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have to,
Is the planning commission going to look at both sites, Tire Max and the senior housing? The only reason I'm asking is when you look at the exit and entry from 303 for this Tire Max and the exit and entry from the senior housing development, it's not that far away from each other, right? So the traffic study, I would hope the planning committee, someone would look at that to ensure that it's not going to just, I mean, we've got 100 and some people coming out of that apartment.
so ultimately what, and this is my understanding, I can clarify with Denise Testa, but ultimately ODOT will provide their input on both projects. Now, whatever project,
Separately or independently of one another, or will they look at both projects coming together?
the first one, whoever gets to the finish line first, will be independent. The second will be dependent upon ongoing project.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if the proposed Tire Max goes in and there's ingress egress from 303, and then if the senior housing goes in and the two entrances are too close to each other, ODOT will provide that input and one of them is going to have to change.
Okay.
Well, they're going to have to deal with it. Whether it's extending the road, the extra lane, or whatever it is, that's their ODOT's job.
Yep, that's a bailiwick.
Okay.
Mr. Larson, if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry.
Yep.
This is a simple one. Jim Larson, 20 Car Road. When does the flag drop? Who starts first or who finishes first between the two? How does that work?
Ultimately, it would ultimately be whoever's approved first.
Whoever's approved.
Any other questions about it? All right, so knowing that we can't do anything with this until next month anyways, I'd entertain a motion to continue the conversation on the Pride One Senior Housing Project to the August 5th meeting, or a regular meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Crew. Seconded by Mr. Manley. Please call the roll.
Marzullo?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yep.
Crew?
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman Marzullo, just a quick point of order. In reviewing the planning commission agenda for next Wednesday, I believe it is the 7th, Pride One Senior Housing
Is not on.
is not on.
Okay.
But their next meeting will also be before
Before our next
because
meeting.
we are on the 6th, so they're on the 5th.
So whether or not we will get their feedback, we will definitely have their preliminary feedback. Much the same way we have their preliminary feedback on the Tire Max, right? Or I'm sorry, not the Tire Max, the proposed text amendments. Yep. All right. So I guess that gets us into the chairman's report, actually well ahead of where we'd normally be. What's this?
That's the proposed amendments.
Was that
Suzanne made suggestions to change?
I'm certainly happy to look at. Actually, one of the things that
That way they can be part of the public hearing at the next meeting.
okay,
Right?
yeah, we can
I think
look
that's
at
why
it.
she wants us to.
Certainly. Everyone in your packet, we have for zoning commission consideration 6/3/2021. It looks like section 9.7. Right now it says minimum number of waiting spaces by type and use of establishment. And what has been highlighted for us is the gasoline stations. And the number of waiting spaces.
Are you looking at the text amendments? Is that what you're?
It's a new text amendment that was sent over or that was included in our packet
Okay,
or recommended text amendment.
okay.
Is it? I know I had, it's not.
Maybe this one.
Oh, got it.
Just looking wrong. This is
Is this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a 6/3 meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, say 7/1. Okay.
Because she had proposed them last time, we didn't discuss them, so she stuck them back in our packet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so it says on A5, gasoline stations, 2 waiting spaces per accessible side of a gasoline pump island. We probably need to bring that verbiage in line with the rest of the proposed text amendment. Which,
So number 5 should just be automobile refueling and recharging station,
Yeah.
which is the text.
yep,
And then gasoline pump island. I don't know if we want to say fuel or electricity
or
distribution location. I don't know how you change that one.
yeah, that's a good question. Maybe that's why we didn't do it last time. Let's see.
I think you could almost say distribution station for fuel or electricity because we use distribution of fuel or electricity. So just say distribution station of fuel or electricity. That would be a pump. That would be an electrical plug.
Would you mind saying that again? Let me try and wrap my head around it.
Nope. So it would be 2 waiting spaces per accessible side of a distribution station for fuel or electricity.
Distribution station.
Just thinking of where it's distributed, whether it's the pump or.
So does that mean that
Trying to tie it to that language.
yeah, and I'm looking at a distribution station, which is the same verbiage as the entire thing is a station. So is it 2? I want to make sure that it's crystal clear. It's not 2 per automobile refueling station. It needs to be 2.
Can we just say fuel pump or charging station?
How about dispenser? That's what's called in the industry.
Okay.
Spencer?
The dispenser.
All right, let's clear that. Yes, sir, you have had your hand up?
In the olden days, we used to call it a fuel island.
That's what
And that's what,
it's called.
Okay, I don't have one of those.
no problem.
If we were looking
And
for another word, that might have been a word.
thank you very much. And I mean, what we're trying to do is get away from the old days because that's
No problem.
causing a lot of confusion. Thank you, though.
I understood your confusion, the possible confusion between the
Yeah.
entire station.
Station versus one point of distribution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we get. Point of distribution.
No, I think you had it right just a minute ago. What did you say, Marcus?
Well, if we change it from distribution station to dispenser of fuel or electricity,
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Okay, so you have 2 waiting spaces per accessible side of,
a dispenser for fuel or electricity. That's good enough.
all right. I think that any suggested adjustments there? And then if we look on the next page of that small packet, it's section 18.9I, and it's the simple addition of an apostrophe.
That's for consistency with another amendment that was made. She just caught that there was the same type of.
Correct. No, and I swear I just saw something as I was looking through it again. Okay. So in 6I 2.2, H, we're changing it to automotive repair and service.
Yeah, because that's what our definition is.
As opposed to automobile.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why we're just matching it.
Mhm. Did anybody catch anything else as they were reading through the proposed text amendment that are worth changing? No?
Yeah. We have that definition.
What's that?
He was wondering if this 5 change
Then we kept the
should be automotive refueling, but we call that automobile.
Yeah.
So we're good.
All right. Was there anything else that I overlooked?
So can we I think we should make a motion because we made a
To
motion
make those changes full and submit them to the Medina County Planning Commission.
So I'll make a motion to amend section 9.7A5 to automobile refueling and recharging station, crossing out a gasoline station. Also changing it from 2 waiting spaces per accessible side of a gasoline pump island to 2 waiting spaces per accessible side of a dispenser, thank you, for fuel or electricity. And then section 18.9I, we will add an apostrophe where it says all manufacturer specifications, so it's apostrophe S.
I know, yeah.
Second.
We can't cover the
All
road.
right. Moved by Mr. Fisher and seconded by Mr. Schneider.
They don't come down to the ground.
Please call the roll.
Marzullo?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Crew?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
All right, great. So we're gonna, I guess I'll have to move at light speed to get that to them. Well, with that being said, I think that does bring us up to my chairman's report, which again, I think we covered the emails and the public comment pretty well.
Could you do me one favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you read Lisa Rush's comment one more time?
Sure. Whole email?
Just, yeah, I guess it is,
Okay, certainly.
since we're on the text amendments.
Yeah. In reading 18.7, this appears to be an additional screening requirement for ground-mounted solar arrays, requiring the entire array to be screened instead of just screening the accessories makes ground-mounted solar arrays less effective for individuals with narrow parcels. If I need to put 15-foot tall vegetation to screen my 15-foot tall array, I've either got a good bit of property between the neighbor and the array, or my vegetation is likely to shade parts of the array. While there are technologies to handle localized shading in the array, a microinverter, these are more expensive and less common. A lot of solar arrays are set up so individual panel production is reduced to the lowest panel production. As a result, shading a single panel with an array can dramatically reduce electrical generation. Is the screening requirement aesthetic? If my neighbor can build a big ugly barn without having to screen it from my view, I don't see more detriment if they build a big ugly solar installation. At that, they could build a big ugly barn and install roof mounted panels. If the screening requirement seeks to minimize glare/reflection, then a stipulation like 18.6G seems like it would be sufficient.
I do now see her point, because we removed the screening language from accessory components and left it separate, which makes it now a screening for the solar array as well. So I think is that what we intended, or did we intend for the accessory components?
I
ground stuff.
Because we cut from the accessory component, I think the intent was in fact to screen it all.
But
Now, what I'm recognizing here though is
how do you screen it all? Those are huge.
they can be. However, we also have to keep in mind the perspective from, and this is assuming a level playing field, a level lot. You could put 7-foot trees along your property line.
But then you're blocking the sun.
Not necessarily, because a 7-foot tree, because the solar array needs to be outside of the side yard setbacks. It can't be in the side yard setback. So that's going to be at least 15 feet off the property line. There are no setbacks for planting trees. So if you plant 7-foot trees right on your property line, it is completely screened from view without shading the solar array.
Oh, so
I'm not saying this is like I'm just giving
right.
an example.
But you're using a property line as a fence rather than around the solar array.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I don't know if I would say that these, I mean, they're large, but they're not huge. This isn't a big solar farm. This is only enough raise to power your home.
Right.
So it's not much larger than the roof mounted one. Right. So it's. And
4 or 5 feet though. 5,
Trustee Kalina and I were invited out to see a residence solar array, and it provided all of the electricity for his home.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't overly large. I'd say honestly, it was probably about the size of these two tables end to end, maybe a little bit bigger.
Didn't have any kids.
Yeah. What's that?
So you probably didn't have any kids with 5,000 devices plugged into something.
They were grown and gone, but it was energy neutral. I believe he had been. So the arrays themselves really aren't tremendous, because we do stipulate that it can only be enough to run your home and accessory buildings.
Right. Okay.
So honestly, the screening requirement. This is why I'm hoping she'll be able to attend next month. Get a little bit more understanding of what she's asking. Because it's good. It does bring up a good point and a possible blind spot, but simultaneously, these aren't massive arrays that can't be screened.
the other thing at the solar array is they're constantly changing the wattage of each panel. So a long time ago, you're lucky to get 25 watts. Now you're getting 35, 50 watts on the panel, which is equivalent to getting rid of 4 panels. So therefore, as time progresses, they are going to get smaller and smaller. And let's face it, you're not going to put up a tulip tree, an oak tree, anything that's going to grow 80 foot tall. You're going to put something that's going to be a medium-sized bush or a tree that maybe will only go up to 15 feet.
With fairly dense vegetation.
With a dense vegetation. So, honestly, it's really up, again, to the homeowner to pick the right items for the right thing. Not for a township to dictate to them exactly what kind of trees they have to plant and what have you. Our restrictions are setbacks, and they have to follow the setbacks or ask for a change in it by going to the BZA. It's that simple.
Next.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense. All right. So assuming we have the input from Medina County Planning Commission, which we will, that gives us the opportunity to then vote as to whether or not we want to send it with or without additional amendments to the trustees. It might be worthwhile to have a work session to discuss the input before we meet next as a commission, because that allows us to go over the attorney-client information that we received and discuss it as a team before we make a decision as to whether or not we want to make any further adjustments before voting on it. Would anyone be opposed to that? And I think it would be a relatively brief meeting, maybe hour. But I think I personally, I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review it. It is in the packet, but we do need to discuss it, and because it is close hold information, it does need to be done, unfortunately, in a closed setting. And I believe the work session is what provides that to us. Is that correct, Trustee Clean? Work session is.
I don't know. I think you might be able to. You could do that at any meeting, frankly. But obviously, it will provide you the opportunity not to have to impact the business of your traditional meeting, if that's what you're trying to avoid.
Yes. First off, I think, again, we'll be very popular next month. And I certainly don't want to hold up the residents and have to push everyone out or leave them in here. We go into another room and debate for an hour and then come back. I don't think that's appropriate unless our team says otherwise.
What date do you have in mind, sir?
Generally speaking, we do it every couple of weeks, I guess, like in 2 weeks. That would be.
Do we want to do it after the Tire Max discussion? So if we want to have any discussion on Tire Max as well, because that will happen on the 28th is the public hearings where they'll be voting probably on that. I didn't know if that matters or not, but.
I thought the purpose was to go back over these things for the text amendments.
If that's what we're doing, then that's fine. I was just mentioning if we also wanted to have any discussion on that. But it might not matter.
Definitely not the week of the 22nd or 23rd.
No.
22nd's the middle of the week.
No, it's a Thursday.
I'm slammed the 12th through the 16th. So maybe that last week, basically 1 week before our.
Matt, what is the purpose? Are you doing an executive session?
Or
work session?
I don't know if we,
I think you want to do executive because a work session is public, isn't it? It's an,
The reason, what's the purpose of your executive session?
To review the attorney-client information that we have before we vote on the text
I think
amendment.
that's the reason to go into executive session.
Can't a work session be, well, it's open to the public, but they don't necessarily have to participate unless you as the chair choose to let somebody or person speak?
Your attorney would have to be present
Is that
to go
correct?
into a legal executive session.
Okay, so if then we can have a work session where we can go into another room if public is present, that it's not necessarily an executive session. It would be I don't know how we as a commission can discuss client or lawyer, legal, whatever the word is.
Yeah, we can't waive the privilege. Even if our attorney's not here, we waive the privilege if we discuss that in any sort of forum that's not an executive session.
right.
So we
And-
need to have,
Yeah, because we would
Brian
also
Richter
have to
can
have
discuss
public meeting minutes. So even if it's closed to the public, the fact that
minutes,
there's the
right.
minutes, they're still releasing the attorney-client privilege information.
Right.
So it's got to
It has
be an
to be an
executive
executive.
session in order to have a discussion on attorney-client
Yeah,
privilege
even if
information.
she's not there.
They'll just need to reach out to him.
Yeah, I would get clarification because it sounds to me like that you have to have him present in order to do that for that to be your purpose.
do we need to provide public knowledge of an executive session?
No, you can call a work session and go into executive session.
But then we would have to announce the work session ahead of time.
The meeting has to be advertised.
Yes,
Right, the
okay.
meeting has to be advertised.
Do we want?
Does it have to be first voted on here, then advertised? Or can we, as a commission, say, hey, we met with Mr. Richter, he's available on this day or this day, we're going to do it here, and then advertise it out to the community?
You can call a meeting.
Yeah, you can call a meeting, but you can't decide your meeting date behind closed doors unless you're doing it through your liaison. Because you as a team can't make that decision behind closed doors. All your decisions are being made publicly, even a meeting date.
So if I reach out to Trustee Kalina and say, hey, Mr. Richter is available on these days, can you please
Make
help
sure
us set up
Yeah,
to have this executive session
correct.
Or meeting.
or meeting?
Or meeting, right.
You can't vote on anything in executive session, but
And that's not the purpose. The purpose is to digest the information that we have as a team with Mr. Richter present.
So I think then you need to find out when his availability is and then reach out to Trustee Kalina and get a meeting set up. I don't think we can decide on a date between
Okay.
us.
Yeah, so then,
But you know our availability, so maybe you could use that when you ask him what
So-
his availability.
my availability is not the week of the 12th through the 16th, and yours is the 22nd, 23rd?
Yeah, not that wedding, got a wedding.
Does anybody else have some questionable availability? No? All right. That's good to know. Trustee Kalina, I'm sure I'll be reaching out to you in the very near future and CCing Mr. Richter. All right, great, thank you. But I do think it's going to be very important for us to first digest it before we meet, and then when we're meeting, I think it'll be a rather hearty discussion. And then it'll determine whether or not we adjust the text amendment before voting on it. All right, so we've got the, we've continued the public hearing to August 5th at 6:30 so that we can once again have a public hearing on text amendments. Then we will have the regular zoning commission meeting to follow directly at 7. on the same date, August 5th. That pretty much covers it for the chair's report. Anything, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Snyder?
Nope.
Ms. Crew?
No.
Mr. Mann?
No, nothing.
Ms. Rubel? Nothing. Mr.
For the record, alternate R line has been present for the entire meeting. He is virtual.
Does that count as far as attendance at this
I don't
point?
have the answer to that because he wasn't able to. I think he's just been monitoring.
Okay.
You can't vote.
Yeah. Mr. Wilson, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, no, fine, thank you.
All right, great. Trustee Khalil?
No.
Trustee Burns?
Nothing.
Trustee Augustine? Anything you'd like to add?
No.
All right, great. And have we sufficiently answered or at least touched on any questions from public? Are there any outstanding questions that you'd like me to address? All right, great. Well then, at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
Will be it.
Second, I guess, did you?
Moved by Mr. Burns, or Mr. Snyder. And seconded by Mr. Manley. Call the roll.
Marzullo?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Crew?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes. All right. Meeting is adjourned at 8:35.
I think this might be the first meeting.
That we-
Recording stopped.
Had a motion to extend
Yeah.
since you've been chair.